The notification found from Marcus's phone cut through the quiet of his cramped studio apartment like a blade. He glanced at the screen while stirring instant ramen on his single-burner stove, expecting another rejection email from yet another job application. Instead, he saw a text from his younger brother Ryan, the first communication they'd had in months. "Hey, loser. Just got promoted to regional director at Pinnacle Corp. Guess one of us actually made something of himself. Still living in that shoebox, pretending to be an entrepreneur? Mom always said you'd amount to nothing. And look, she was right. Some of us are built for success. Others are just built to serve people like me. Don't embarrass the family name any more than you already have." Marcus set down his wooden spoon, his appetite vanishing as the words sank in. The message was followed by a screenshot of Ryan's new business card, the corporate logo gleaming against expensive cardstock. Regional Director. At 28, Ryan had climbed higher in 2 years than Marcus had managed in his entire career. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Ryan. This time, a photo from what looked like an upscale restaurant. Ryan sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by colleagues in expensive suits, his arm draped around a woman Marcus didn't recognize. The caption read, "Celebrating with my team tonight. Some of us know how to lead. Others just know how to follow orders. Guess which one you are, big brother?" Marcus walked to his bathroom mirror and stared at his reflection. At 31, he looked older than his years. Dark circles shadowed his eyes from countless nights spent coding and building prototypes. His hair needed cutting, his beard needed trimming, and his t-shirt had a small hole near the collar. Ryan wasn't wrong about the shoebox apartment or the string of failed ventures. What hurt most was how accurate the assessment felt. The brothers had grown up in the same middle-class household in Sacramento, sons of a postal worker and a school secretary. But somewhere along the way, their paths had diverged dramatically. Ryan had sailed through business school, landed internships at prestigious firms, and networked his way up corporate ladders with an ease that seemed almost supernatural. Meanwhile, Marcus had bounced between startups, failed product launches, and increasingly desperate attempts to prove himself as an innovator. Their parents, Robert and Linda Chen, had made no secret of their preferences. Ryan brought home promotion announcements and salary increases. Marcus brought home stories of venture capital rejections and partnership deals that fell through. During family dinners, the conversation inevitably turned to Ryan's latest achievements, while Marcus sat quietly, picking at his food, feeling like a cautionary tale. The last family gathering had been particularly brutal. Ryan had just bought a house in the hills overlooking the city, complete with a 3-car garage and infinity pool. He'd shown everyone photos on his phone while Marcus tried to explain his latest project, a productivity app that he was convinced would revolutionize small business operations. Ryan had listened with a smirk before saying, "Marcus, maybe it's time to consider getting a real job. This startup thing isn't working out. There's no shame in admitting you're not cut out for leadership." Their father had nodded in agreement. "Ryan's right, son. Look at what he's accomplished. Maybe you should ask him if his company has any openings, entry-level positions, something stable." Marcus had left that dinner feeling smaller than he ever had in his life. The drive back to his apartment had been a blur of self-doubt and bitter acceptance. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was deluding himself about his potential. Now, staring at Ryan's latest message, something inside him shifted. Not anger exactly, but a cold determination that surprised him with its intensity. He walked back to his computer, where lines of code filled multiple monitors. For the past 18 months, he'd been working on something different from his previous ventures. Not
Another app or platform, but a comprehensive business intelligence system that could predict market trends with unprecedented accuracy. The technology was revolutionary, combining artificial intelligence with real-time data analysis in ways that even the biggest tech companies hadn't fully mastered. He'd been coding 16-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination, too focused to realize how close he was to something extraordinary. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus deleted Ryan's messages without responding and turned back to his work. The algorithm he'd been debugging finally clicked into place around 3 in the morning. He ran a test simulation using publicly available market data from the previous year and watched as his system predicted stock movements with 94% accuracy. His hands trembled as he ran the test again, then a third time. The results were consistent. He spent the next week refining the system, eliminating bugs, and preparing a presentation that would change everything. But he didn't reach out to traditional venture capital firms or angel investors. Instead, he researched the biggest names in corporate America, the CEOs and board members who controlled billions in assets and made decisions that shaped entire industries. His target was Thornfield Industries, a massive conglomerate with interests in everything from aerospace to consumer goods. The company had been struggling with strategic planning, making costly mistakes in market timing that had cost shareholders hundreds of millions of dollars. Marcus knew their pain points because he'd studied every major corporation's public filings, looking for patterns his system could exploit. He crafted an email to Victoria Thornfield herself, the legendary CEO who had built her family's small manufacturing business into a global empire. Getting her attention would be nearly impossible through traditional channels. But Marcus had learned something during his years of failure. Sometimes the direct approach was the only approach that worked. "Miss Thornfield," he wrote, "your company lost $200 million last quarter because you entered the Southeast Asian market 6 months too early. My system predicted that timing error with 96% confidence. I can prevent similar mistakes from ever happening again. I'm not looking for funding. I'm looking for a partnership. Give me 30 minutes of your time, and I'll show you technology that will revolutionize how Thornfield Industries make strategic decisions. If I'm wrong, you've lost nothing. If I'm right, you've gained everything." He attached a detailed analysis of Thornfield's recent market mistakes, complete with his system's alternative recommendations and projected outcomes. Then he sent the email and waited. 3 days later, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Is this Marcus Chen?" The voice was crisp, professional, unmistakably authoritative. "Yes, this is Marcus. This is Victoria Thornfield. I received your email. I'm intrigued by your analysis of our Q3 performance. How quickly can you be in New York?" Marcus looked around his cluttered apartment, at the towers of empty energy drink cans, and the mattress on the floor that served as his bed. "I can be there tomorrow." "Good. My office, 10 a.m. Don't disappoint me, Mr. Chen." The flight to New York was the longest 3 hours of Marcus's life. He'd used his last credit card to buy the ticket, and his only decent suit was wrinkled from being stuffed in a duffel bag. But his laptop contained 18 months of revolutionary work, and that was all that mattered. Thornfield Industries occupied 4 floors of a gleaming Manhattan skyscraper. The lobby alone was larger than Marcus's entire apartment, with marble floors and abstract sculptures that probably cost more than his annual rent. He announced himself to the receptionist, trying to project confidence despite feeling completely out of place.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Thornfield was nothing like he'd expected. Instead of the corporate ice queen he'd imagined, she was warm, engaging, and possessed the kind of sharp intelligence that made successful people successful. She was in her 50s, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they encountered. "Show me what you've got, Mr. Chen." Marcus opened his laptop and began his presentation. He walked her through the system's architecture, demonstrated its predictive capabilities, and showed her exactly how it could have prevented Thornfield Industries' recent costly mistakes. As he spoke, he watched her expression shift from polite interest to genuine fascination. "This is extraordinary work," she said when he finished. "But I have to ask, why bring this to me directly? Why not start your own company, seek venture capital, follow the traditional route?" Marcus had prepared for this question. "Because I've tried the traditional route, Miss Thornfield. I've spent years chasing investors who didn't understand the technology or the vision. I don't want to build another startup that might succeed. I want to partner with someone who's already successful, someone who can implement this technology at a scale that actually matters." She leaned back in her chair, studying him. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Make me your chief strategy officer. Give me a team and the resources to implement the system across all of Thornfield's operations. In exchange, I'll guarantee you competitive advantages that your rivals can't match. Within 2 years, your company will be making strategic decisions with a precision that seems almost supernatural. And if it doesn't work, then fire me. No severance, no lawsuit, no hard feelings. Victoria Thornfield smiled. You're either brilliant or insane, Mr. Chen. Possibly both. I like that. She extended her hand. Welcome to Thornfield Industries. The transformation happened faster than Marcus had dared to hope. Within 6 months, his system was integrated into every major decision-making process at Thornfield Industries. The results were immediate and dramatic. The company began anticipating market shifts before they happened, entering new sectors at optimal times, and avoiding costly mistakes that plagued their competitors. Marcus's official title was Chief Strategy Officer, but his real role was something unprecedented in corporate America. He was the architect of prescient decision-making, the man who could see around corners in a way that seemed magical to those who didn't understand the technology behind it. Victoria promoted him to Senior Vice President after his first year, then to Executive Vice President after his second. His salary climbed into 7 figures, but more importantly, his influence extended throughout the organization. Managers across the company sought his input on major decisions. Board members quoted his analyses in investor calls. Meanwhile, Marcus had lost touch with his family almost entirely. His parents still called occasionally, usually to report on Ryan's latest achievements, but Marcus kept those conversations brief. He told them he was doing well, that his business was growing, but he never shared specifics. They assumed he was still struggling in his cramped apartment, still chasing impossible dreams. Ryan continued sending occasional messages, each one dripping with condescension. Photos from corporate retreats, screenshots of performance bonuses, updates about his engagement to someone from the marketing department. The underlying message was always the same. Look how successful I am while you continue to fail. Marcus never responded. He was too busy reshaping one of America's largest corporations. 2.5 years after that first meeting with Victoria Thornfield, Marcus received the call that would change everything. He was in his corner office on the 42nd floor, reviewing quarterly projections, when his assistant buzzed him. Mr. Chen, Miss Thornfield would like to see you in the boardroom immediately. Marcus found Victoria waiting with the company's board of directors, all of whom he'd worked with extensively during his tenure. Their expressions were serious, formal, the kind of faces people made when delivering momentous news. Marcus, Victoria began, as you know, I've been considering retirement for some time. Building this company has been the work of a lifetime, but I'm 72 years old. It's time for the next generation to take control. Marcus nodded, assuming she was about to announce your chosen successor from among the executive team. The board and I have been discussing this transition for months, she continued. We've evaluated every possible candidate, considered every angle, analyzed every option. There's only one person who has consistently demonstrated the vision, intelligence, and strategic capability necessary to lead Thornfield Industries into the future. She turned to face him directly. Marcus, the board is prepared to offer you the position of Chief Executive Officer. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at her, certain he'd misunderstood. I'm sorry, what? We want you to run the company, Marcus. Your work over the past 2.5 years has been transformational. You've not only prevented costly mistakes, you've identified opportunities that have generated billions in additional revenue. More importantly, you've shown the kind of innovative thinking that will be essential as we navigate an increasingly complex business environment. One of the board members, an elderly man named Harrison Webb, spoke up. In 50 years of corporate governance, I've never seen anyone demonstrate the combination of technical brilliance and strategic insight that you've shown, Marcus. This decision was unanimous. Marcus felt dizzy. CEO of Thornfield Industries meant he would be leading a company with over 100,000 employees and annual revenue exceeding $50 billion. It would make him one of the youngest CEOs in corporate America, responsible for operations spanning 6 continents. I'm honored by your confidence, he managed to say, but this is unexpected. I need some time to consider. Of course, Victoria interrupted. Take all the time you need. But Marcus, I want you to know that this isn't charity or favoritism. This is purely based on merit. You've earned this opportunity through your work, your results, and your vision for the future. That evening, Marcus sat in his new apartment, a penthouse overlooking Central Park that he'd purchased 6 months earlier, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. In 3 years, he'd gone from stirring instant ramen in a studio apartment to being offered control of one of America's largest corporations. His phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, he thought it might be Ryan with another boastful update, but the sender was his mother. "Marcus, honey, I know we haven't talked much lately, but Ryan mentioned you might be looking for work. He thinks his company might have an opening in their IT department. It wouldn't pay much, but it would be steady. Maybe it's time to be practical. Call me." Marcus stared at the message, remembering all the family dinners where he'd felt invisible, all the conversations about Ryan's success, while his own struggles were dismissed as delusions of grandeur. He thought about the teenager who dreamed of building something revolutionary, who'd endured years of failure and humiliation, and who'd refused to give up even when everyone around him suggested he should. He walked to his window and looked out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there, Ryan was probably celebrating another small victory, another step up the corporate ladder, completely unaware that his nobody brother was about to become one of the most powerful executives in America. Marcus picked up his phone and began typing a response to his mother, but then stopped. Not yet. The conversation he needed to have with his family required more than a text message. It required a face-to-face meeting where he could see their expressions, where the full impact of his transformation would be impossible to deny or diminish. He had accepted Victoria's offer earlier that evening, signing contracts that would make his appointment official within 30 days. Soon, he would command resources that dwarfed not just Ryan's company, but entire industries. The boy who'd been dismissed as a failure was about to become the man who controlled the fates of thousands of other companies, including the one where his brother worked as a regional director. As Marcus prepared for bed that night, he felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and melancholy. The success he'd achieved was beyond his wildest dreams, but it had come at the cost of relationships with the people who should have supported him from the beginning. Tomorrow, he would begin preparing for the most important confrontation of his life, not with business rivals or corporate competitors, but with the family who had never believed in him. The transformation was complete. The question that remained was whether the people who had dismissed him as a nobody would be able to accept the reality of who he had become. The announcement of Marcus's appointment as CEO of Thornfield Industries sent shockwaves through the business world. Financial news networks analyzed the unprecedented rise of the 31-year-old tech genius who had seemingly appeared from nowhere to lead one of America's most influential corporations. Forbes scheduled a cover story. The Wall Street Journal called it the most surprising executive appointment in decades. Marcus insisted on a 6-month transition period before officially taking control. He wanted to understand every aspect of Thornfield's operations, from manufacturing plants in Ohio to research facilities in Singapore. He spent weeks traveling between locations, meeting with department heads, learning the intricate details of running a global enterprise. During this period, he maintained absolute silence about his new position when it came to his family. His parents continued calling occasionally, with updates about Ryan's career and suggestions that Marcus consider more practical employment options. Each conversation felt increasingly surreal, as Marcus sat in boardrooms making decisions that affected millions of people, while his mother worried about his ability to hold down a steady job. Ryan's messages became more frequent and more cutting. His younger brother seemed to interpret Marcus's silence as evidence of continued failure. The texts arrived with clockwork regularity, each one designed to highlight Ryan's achievements while emphasizing Marcus's perceived inadequacies. "Just closed the biggest deal in our regional office history. 7 figures, baby! Meanwhile, Mom told me you're still working on projects. When are you going to face reality? Some people are meant to lead, others are meant to follow. Guess we know which category you fall into." Marcus would read these messages while reviewing acquisition proposals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The disconnect between Ryan's perception and Marcus's reality had become so vast that it felt like they were living in parallel universes.
The transformation of Marcus's personal life happened gradually. The cramped studio apartment gave way to a penthouse overlooking Central Park. The secondhand furniture was replaced with pieces selected by a professional interior designer. His wardrobe evolved from discount store clothes to custom-tailored suits that cost more than he used to make in a year. But the external changes were nothing compared to the internal transformation. Years of failure and rejection had taught Marcus resilience, but success was teaching him something different: the power of patience. He could have called his family immediately after accepting the CEO position, could have sent Ryan a screenshot of his new business card, could have proven his worth with the kind of dramatic gesture that would have provided immediate satisfaction. Instead, he chose to wait. The longer his family remained unaware of his transformation, the more meaningful the eventual revelation would become. Every condescending comment from Ryan, every worried suggestion from his parents, every assumption about his continued failure was building toward a moment of reckoning that would be impossible to dismiss or minimize. Marcus threw himself into preparing for his new role with the same intensity he had once brought to coding. He studied under Victoria, learning not just the mechanics of corporate leadership, but the subtle arts of influence and persuasion. She became his mentor in ways that went far beyond business strategy. "Power isn't about making people fear you," she told him during one of their regular strategy sessions. "It's about making them understand that their success depends on your success. When people realize that your vision aligns with their best interests, they'll follow you anywhere." Under her guidance, Marcus learned to navigate the complex relationships that defined corporate leadership. He studied the personalities of board members, the motivations of department heads, the concerns of major shareholders. By the time his official start date arrived, he understood Thornfield Industries as thoroughly as he had once understood computer code. The formal announcement of his appointment was scheduled for a Monday morning press conference in Manhattan. The weekend before, Marcus finally decided it was time to reconnect with his family. Not to reveal his new position, but to gauge their current attitudes, to hear one final time their assumptions about his life and prospects. He called his parents from his penthouse on Saturday evening. His mother answered on the second ring, her voice brightening when she recognized his number. "Marcus, how wonderful to hear from you. How are you doing, sweetheart?" "I'm doing well, Mom. Really well. How are you and Dad?" "We're fine, honey, but we've been worried about you. You never call anymore, and when you do, you're always so vague about work. Are you eating enough? Are you taking care of yourself?" Marcus looked around his penthouse, at the view of Central Park stretching beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, at the custom furniture and original artwork that decorated his living space. "I'm taking good care of myself. I've been busy with work, but things are going very well." "That's what you always say. But Marcus, honey, maybe it's time to consider a different approach. Ryan was just telling us about another promotion at his company. He's doing so well, making such good decisions. Maybe you could learn something from his example." The irony was so profound that Marcus almost laughed. In 48 hours, he would be announced as the CEO of a company that could acquire Ryan's entire organization as a minor subsidiary. Instead, he kept his voice neutral. What kind of promotion did Ryan get? He's been made senior regional director. Can you believe it? At his age, already managing such a large territory, his salary is over $200,000 now. He bought a new BMW to celebrate. Marcus calculated quickly. His annual compensation package as CEO would exceed $50 million, not including stock options that could multiply that figure several times over. Ryan's new salary represented roughly 4 days of Marcus's income. That's great news for Ryan. I'm happy he's doing well. He really is, sweetheart. And he mentioned that his company might be looking for people in their technology department. Nothing glamorous, but steady work with good benefits. Maybe it's time to consider something stable. I appreciate the suggestion, Mom, but I'm committed to my current path. He heard his father's voice in the background. Then his mother's muffled response as she covered the phone. When she returned, her tone had shifted slightly. Your father wants to know if you need any financial help. We know things have been difficult, and we don't want you to struggle unnecessarily. We have some savings set aside. Marcus felt a complex mixture of emotions. His parents' offer came from genuine love and concern, but it was based on such a fundamental misunderstanding of his situation that he hardly knew how to respond. The man they were offering
Help financially was about to become one of the highest paid executives in corporate America. I don't need financial help, but thank you for offering. I love you both, and I appreciate that you care about me. We do care, Marcus. We just want you to be realistic about your prospects. Not everyone is cut out for entrepreneurship. There's no shame in working for someone else and having a regular job with a steady paycheck. After ending the call, Marcus stood at his window looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, everything would change. The parents who worried about his financial stability would learn that their son controlled a corporate empire. The brother who mocked his ambitions would discover that his nobody sibling had achieved success beyond anything he had imagined possible. That night, Marcus received one final message from Ryan. It was a photo from what appeared to be an expensive restaurant, showing Ryan and his fiancée celebrating his promotion with champagne and oysters. The caption read, "Living the good life. Some of us work hard and get rewarded. Others just dream about success. Guess which one you are, big brother. Maybe someday you'll figure out how the real world works." Marcus set his phone aside without responding, as he had done for years. But this time, his silence carried a different weight. In less than 12 hours, the business world would learn that the dreamer Ryan mocked had built something extraordinary. The brother who supposedly didn't understand how the real world worked was about to reshape it. Sunday passed in careful preparation. Marcus reviewed his remarks for the press conference, coordinated with Thornfield's communications team, and finalized the transition timeline with Victoria. The announcement would be made at 10 in the morning, followed by a detailed presentation about the company's strategic direction under his leadership. The media response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes of the announcement, Marcus's name was trending on social media. Business journalists scrambled to piece together his background, trying to understand how someone so young and relatively unknown had been chosen to lead such a massive corporation. The coverage focused on his revolutionary predictive technology and the dramatic improvements it had brought to Thornfield's performance. Analysts praised the board's bold decision to embrace innovation over traditional corporate hierarchy. Several articles compared his appointment to the tech industry's most legendary success stories. Marcus watched the coverage from his office, noting the shift in how the world perceived him. Yesterday, he had been an unknown quantity. Today, he was being hailed as a visionary leader whose insights could transform entire industries. The transformation was complete, at least in the public sphere. His phone began buzzing with congratulatory messages from business contacts, former colleagues, and professional acquaintances. But the calls he was waiting for didn't come. His family remained silent, apparently unaware of the news that was reshaping corporate America. It wasn't until Tuesday afternoon that his mother finally called. Her voice sounded confused, almost disoriented. "Marcus? Honey, I just saw something online that doesn't make sense. There's an article about someone named Marcus Chen becoming CEO of some big company? It's not you, is it? I mean, it couldn't be you, right?" Marcus had rehearsed this moment for years, but now that it had arrived, he found himself surprisingly calm. "Yes, Mom, it's me." The silence stretched so long that Marcus wondered if the call had been disconnected. When his mother finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I don't understand. How is this possible? You were we thought you were still struggling with your startup ideas."
One of the youngest CEOs in America? This can't be real. It's real, Mom. I accepted the position last week. The announcement was yesterday. He heard her calling for his father, her voice rising with excitement and confusion. When his father came on the line, his tone was skeptical. "Son, what's going on here? Your mother is reading me some article about you becoming a CEO, but that doesn't make any sense. Just last week, you were talking about looking for stable work." Dad, I never said I was looking for stable work. You and Mom assumed I needed help because I wasn't sharing details about my career. The truth is, I've been building something extraordinary for years. Now it's paying off. But how did this happen so quickly? Last time we talked, you were living in that small apartment, working on computer projects that never seemed to go anywhere. Marcus realized that his parents' last clear picture of his life was from over 3 years ago. They had no idea about his penthouse apartment, his transformation of Thornfield Industries, or his meteoric rise through the corporate hierarchy. In their minds, he was still the struggling entrepreneur who couldn't make rent. Things have changed dramatically over the past few years. I've been working with Thornfield Industries, developing technology that revolutionized their operations. The board decided to make me CEO based on the results I've achieved. His father's voice softened slightly. Marcus, if this is true, if you really have achieved something this significant, then we owe you an apology. We've been treating you like a failure when apparently you were building something remarkable. You don't owe me an apology, Dad. You were responding to the information you had. I chose not to share details about my work until it was complete. But why didn't you tell us? Why let us worry about you, offer you money, suggest that you get a regular job? Marcus considered how to answer that question honestly. Because I needed to prove something to myself as much as to anyone else. For years, everyone told me I wasn't cut out for leadership, that I should be more practical, more realistic. I needed to achieve something undeniable before I could talk about it. That evening, Marcus finally heard from Ryan. The message was unlike any his brother had ever sent. I saw the news. I don't understand what happened or how you did it, but congratulations. I think we need to talk. For the first time in years, Marcus responded immediately. Yes, I think we do. They arranged to meet the following weekend in Sacramento, at the family home where they had grown up. Marcus would fly out from New York on Friday evening, giving them the entire weekend to process the seismic shift in their relationship. The week passed in a blur of interviews, strategy meetings, and corporate responsibilities. Marcus found himself adapting to his new role with surprising ease. The skills he had developed during years of failure, resilience, creative problem solving, the ability to work under pressure, served him well in the executive suite. Friday evening, Marcus boarded a private jet to Sacramento. The flight gave him time to reflect on how dramatically his life had changed since the last time he had made this journey. 3 years ago, he had driven back to his apartment in a used car, feeling defeated and diminished. Now he was returning as one of the most powerful executives in America, with resources and influence that extended across the globe. His parents met him at the airport, their expressions a mixture of pride, confusion, and something approaching awe. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering apologies for doubting him. His father shook his hand formally, as if meeting him for the first time. The house looked exactly the same, but Marcus felt like a different person walking through rooms where he had once felt so small and insignificant. The family photos lining the hallway told the story of two brothers whose paths had seemed predetermined. Ryan, the golden child destined for conventional success. Marcus, the dreamer whose ambitions exceeded his capabilities. Now those assumptions
Ruins, replaced by a reality that none of them had anticipated. Ryan arrived Saturday morning, driving the new BMW their mother had mentioned. He parked behind the black sedan that had brought Marcus from the airport, then sat in his car for several minutes before approaching the house. Through the window, Marcus watched his brother gather himself, preparing for a conversation that would redefine their relationship forever. When Ryan finally entered the house, the two brothers faced each other for the first time in over a year. Ryan looked successful, confident, every inch the regional director he had become. But there was something different in his eyes, a uncertainty that hadn't been there before. "Hello, Marcus." "Hello, Ryan." Their parents hovered nervously, sensing the tension that filled the room. This was the moment Marcus had been building toward for years, the confrontation that would determine whether his transformation had been worth the price he had paid for it. The living room felt smaller than Marcus remembered, crowded with the weight of years of unspoken resentment and misunderstanding. Ryan sat across from him on the same couch where they had once played video games as children, but the distance between them now seemed insurmountable. Their parents had retreated to the kitchen, ostensibly to prepare lunch, but really to give the brothers space to navigate this unprecedented conversation. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock that had marked time through decades of family gatherings. Ryan broke the silence first, his voice careful and measured. "I read everything I could find about your appointment, the articles, the analysis, the speculation about your background. Most of them say you came out of nowhere." Marcus studied his brother's face, looking for signs of the condescension that had characterized their interactions for years. Instead, he saw something he had never expected: genuine uncertainty. "I didn't come out of nowhere," Marcus replied. "I've been building toward this for years. You just weren't paying attention to what I was actually doing. Because you never told us what you were doing. Every time we talked, you were vague about your work, evasive about your prospects. What were we supposed to think?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering how much of the truth to reveal. "You were supposed to think that maybe your assumptions about me were wrong, that maybe success doesn't always look the way you expect it to look." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Don't turn this around on me. You let us believe you were failing. You let Mom and Dad worry about you, offer you money, suggest that you get a regular job. If you were building something this significant, why didn't you just tell us?" The question hung in the air between them, laden with years of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding. Marcus had anticipated this moment for so long that he had rehearsed dozens of possible responses. But now, facing his brother directly, he found himself choosing honesty over strategy. "Because I needed to prove something to myself before I could prove it to anyone else. And because every time I tried to share my vision with this family, I was told to be more realistic, more practical, more like you. That's not fair. Isn't it? How many family dinners did I sit through listening to updates about your promotions, your salary increases, your achievements, while my own work was dismissed as fantasies? How many times did Dad suggest I should ask you for help finding a real job?" Ryan was quiet for a long moment, his expression shifting as he processed the accusation. "We were trying to help you. We could see you struggling, see the failures piling up. We wanted you to find stability. You wanted me to give up. There's a difference." "Maybe we did," Ryan admitted, his voice softer now. "But Marcus, you have to understand what it looked like from our perspective. You had all these ideas, all these projects, and none of them seemed to ever work out. We weren't trying to hurt you. We were trying to save you from more disappointment." Familiar anger rising in his chest, the same emotion that had fueled him through years of rejection and doubt. But he also recognized something new in his brother's tone, the first hint of acknowledgement that their family's treatment of him might have been misguided. "The problem with trying to save someone from disappointment," Marcus said, "is that you also save them from the possibility of extraordinary success. Every failure taught me something. Every rejection made me stronger. Every time you told me to be more realistic, I became more determined to prove you wrong. And you did prove us wrong. Spectacularly." Ryan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Marcus remembered from their childhood. "I've been thinking about this since I saw the news, trying to understand how I missed something this significant happening in my own brother's life. You missed it because you stopped looking. You decided I was a failure, and after that you only saw evidence that supported that conclusion." Their mother appeared in the doorway, her face drawn with concern. "Boys, lunch is ready. Maybe we could continue this conversation at the table?" The dining room held as many memories as the living room, most of them painful for Marcus. This was where Ryan had announced his acceptance to business school, his first job offer, his promotion to management. This was where Marcus had tried to explain his various ventures only to be met with polite skepticism and suggestions that he consider more conventional paths.
Now they sat around the same table, but the dynamic had shifted completely. Their parents looked at Marcus with a mixture of pride and bewilderment, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Ryan seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the revelation that his loser brother had achieved success beyond anything he had imagined possible. "Marcus," his father began, his voice formal and careful, "I owe you an apology. We all do. We misjudged your capabilities, your potential, your dedication to your work. I'm sorry for the times I suggested you weren't cut out for leadership. Dad, you don't need to apologize for protecting what you thought were my best interests. You are responding to the information you had." "But that's just it," his mother interjected. "We should have had more information. We should have asked better questions, paid closer attention to what you were actually building. Instead, we made assumptions based on superficial observations." Marcus looked around the table at his family, these people who had shaped his early understanding of success and failure. For years, he had imagined this moment as a vindication, a chance to prove them wrong in a way that would be impossible to deny or diminish. But now that it had arrived, he felt something unexpected, compassion for their confusion and regret. "The truth is," Marcus said slowly, "I needed you to doubt me. I needed the pressure of your skepticism to fuel my determination. If you had believed in me from the beginning, I might not have pushed myself as hard as I did." Ryan looked up from his plate, his expression skeptical. "Are you saying you're grateful that we treated you like a failure?" "I'm saying that adversity taught me things that encouragement never could have. It taught me resilience, self-reliance, the ability to maintain vision in the face of criticism. Those qualities were essential to my success." "But at what cost?" their mother asked. "We've barely spoken to you in 3 years. We've missed watching you build something extraordinary. We've lost time we can never get back." Marcus considered her words carefully. The isolation had been painful, but it had also been necessary. The man who had built Thornfield Industries into a predictive powerhouse had been forged in the crucible of family rejection and professional failure. "Maybe some things require distance to develop properly," he said. "Maybe I needed to become who I was meant to be before I could have this conversation with you." The afternoon passed slowly, filled with tentative attempts at understanding and rebuilding. Asked careful questions about his work, his technology, his rise through Thornfield's hierarchy. Marcus answered honestly, but without boasting, trying to help them understand the magnitude of his achievement without making them feel worse about their earlier dismissal of his potential. Ryan remained largely quiet, asking occasional technical questions, but mostly listening as Marcus explained the journey from failed entrepreneur to corporate CEO. There was something almost clinical about his brother's attention, as if he were studying Marcus like a problem to be solved. As evening approached, their parents suggested that Marcus stay the night, offering his childhood bedroom as if he were still the struggling young man who had grown up there. Marcus politely declined, explaining that he had a flight back to New York in the morning and preferred to stay at a hotel near the airport. Ryan walked him outside to the waiting car, the two brothers standing alone together for the first time all day. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of the jasmine that their mother had planted years earlier. "I need to ask you something," Ryan said, his voice lower now, more urgent. "And I need you to give me an honest answer." Marcus waited, sensing that this was the conversation his brother had been building toward all day. "How much do you know about Pinnacle Corp?" The question caught Marcus off guard. Pinnacle Corp was Ryan's company, the regional operation where he had built his career and achieved his recent promotion to senior regional director. Marcus had researched the company extensively during his rise at Thornfield, but not for any reason connected to his brother. "I know they're a mid-sized consulting firm with operations across the Southwest. Why?" Ryan's expression was grim. "Because 3 weeks ago, our parent company announced that they're looking to sell our division. They want to focus on their core markets, and we're considered a non-essential asset." Marcus felt a chill of understanding. The business world was smaller than most people realized,
and the connections between companies were often invisible until moments like this. Ryan, what exactly are you asking me? Thornfield Industries has been mentioned as a potential buyer, one of several, but given your position there now, I need to know if you have any influence over that decision. The irony was so perfect that Marcus almost laughed. After years of being dismissed as irrelevant to the business world, he now held the power to determine his brother's professional fate. The man who had mocked his ambitions was asking for his protection. Are you asking me to intervene on your behalf? Ryan's face flushed. I'm asking you to tell me whether my career is about to be determined by my brother's opinion of me. Marcus studied Ryan's expression, seeing fear beneath the bravado that had characterized their relationship for so long. For the first time, his younger brother was confronting the possibility that his success might be fragile, dependent on forces beyond his control. Thornfield Industries makes acquisition decisions based on strategic value, not personal relationships, Marcus said carefully. If we're considering Pinnacle Corp, it's because our analysis suggests it would be profitable. But you could influence that decision if you wanted to. I could. But why would I want to? The question hung between them like a challenge. Ryan had spent years treating Marcus as inferior, mocking his ambitions, dismissing his potential. Now he was asking for mercy from the brother he had systematically undermined. Because despite everything that's happened between us, we're still family, Ryan said finally. Marcus felt a complex mixture of emotions. Part of him wanted to reject Ryan's appeal, to let his brother experience the same powerlessness that Marcus had felt for years. But a larger part recognized that revenge would accomplish nothing meaningful. Ryan, I want you to understand something. The acquisition decisions I make at Thornfield aren't about settling old scores or proving points. They're about building value for
Shareholders and advancing our strategic objectives. So you won't help me. I didn't say that. I said I won't make business decisions based on personal relationships, but I will make them based on merit and potential. Ryan looked confused. What does that mean? Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Victoria Thornfield had given him the authority to make certain decisions independently, but major acquisitions still required board approval and careful analysis. It means that if Pinnacle Corp represents genuine value to Thornfield Industries, we'll acquire it, regardless of my personal feelings about you. And if we do acquire it, your future with the company will depend entirely on your performance and contribution. And if Pinnacle doesn't represent value to Thornfield, then we won't acquire it, and you'll need to find other options, just like everyone else in your situation. Ryan nodded slowly, seeming to understand that this was the most fairness he could hope for from a brother he had treated so poorly. Marcus, I need to say something before you leave. I've been thinking about the messages I sent you over the years, the things I said about your work, your prospects, your worth as a person. I was wrong, not just about your potential, but about the kind of person I was choosing to be. Marcus waited, sensing there was more. I think I was threatened by your ambition, your willingness to take risks, your refusal to accept conventional definitions of success. It was easier to mock you than to examine my own limitations. The admission was more honest than anything Ryan had ever shared with him, and Marcus felt some of his anger beginning to soften. I appreciate you saying that. But Ryan, the real question isn't whether you were wrong about me, it's whether you're willing to change how you treat people whose paths you don't understand. What do you mean? I mean that somewhere out there, there's probably another dreamer, another risk taker, another person whose vision doesn't fit conventional expectations. How will you treat that person? Will you mock their ambitions the way you mocked mine? Or will you remember this conversation? Ryan was quiet for a long moment, considering the challenge implicit in Marcus's words. I'll try to remember, he said finally. I'll try to be better. Marcus extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Ryan shook it.
The gesture felt formal, ceremonial, like the signing of a treaty between former enemies. "Take care of yourself, Ryan, and take care of our parents. They're good people who made mistakes, but their hearts were always in the right place." The drive to the airport gave Marcus time to process the weekend's events. The confrontation he had imagined for years had been less dramatic but more meaningful than he had expected. Instead of delivering crushing blows to his family's perception of him, he had found himself trying to help them understand the journey that had brought him to this point. His phone buzzed with a text message from Victoria Thornfield. "How did the family reunion go?" Marcus typed his response carefully. "Educational, for everyone involved." "Good. Are you ready to get back to changing the world?" Marcus smiled as he typed his reply. "More ready than ever." The flight back to New York gave him additional time to reflect on the transformation that had occurred, not just in his professional life, but in his relationship with his family. The anger that had sustained him for years was beginning to fade, replaced by something more complex and ultimately more satisfying. The knowledge that he had proven himself capable of extraordinary achievement while maintaining his integrity. Monday morning found Marcus back in his office on the 42nd floor, reviewing acquisition proposals and strategic initiatives. Among the documents on his desk was a detailed analysis of Pinnacle Corp, the company where Ryan worked. The preliminary assessment suggested that Pinnacle's client relationships and regional expertise could complement Thornfield's existing operations, potentially generating significant value. Marcus studied the financial projections, the market analysis, the integration timeline. The business case was solid, though not compelling enough to warrant immediate action. Pinnacle Corp fell into the category of potentially valuable acquisitions that merited further investigation. He called his head of mergers and acquisitions into his office, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Chen, who had engineered some of Thornfield's most successful deals. "Sarah, I want you to take a closer look at the Pinnacle Corp opportunity. Specifically, I want you to evaluate their management team, their operational efficiency, and their cultural fit with our organization. Are we moving this up in our priority queue?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "We're giving it the attention it deserves based on its potential value. Nothing more, nothing less." That afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected call from his mother. Her voice was warm but tentative, as if she were still adjusting to the reality of who her son had become. "Marcus, I wanted to thank you for coming home this weekend. I know it couldn't have been easy, given how we've treated you over the years." "Mom, we don't need to keep apologizing to each other. What matters is moving forward." "I agree, but I also want you to know that your father and I have been talking, and we realize we need to rebuild our relationship with you. We've missed so much of your journey, and we don't want to miss any more." Marcus felt something warm and unexpected in his chest, the possibility of genuine reconciliation with his family. "I'd like that too, Mom, but it has to be based on who I actually am, not who you think I should be." "Absolutely! We want to know the real Marcus, the man who built something extraordinary while we weren't paying attention." They talked for another 20 minutes, making tentative plans for regular phone calls and future visits. When Marcus ended the call, he realized that his transformation was finally complete. He had not only achieved professional success beyond his wildest dreams, but had also found a path toward healing the relationships that mattered most. 3 weeks later, Sarah Chen presented her final analysis of Pinnacle Corp to Marcus and the senior leadership team. Her recommendation was cautiously positive. The acquisition made strategic sense, but the price would need to be carefully negotiated to ensure adequate returns. Marcus authorized her to begin formal discussions with Pinnacle's parent company, but he also made one unusual request. He wanted to personally interview key members of Pinnacle's management team before finalizing any deal. The interviews were scheduled for the following month, and Marcus found himself curious about the opportunity to evaluate his brother's professional capabilities objectively. Ryan would have no idea that his new CEO was his own brother until the moment Marcus walked into the conference room. The morning of the interviews, Marcus arrived at Pinnacle's regional headquarters in Phoenix. The building was modern but modest, reflecting the company's position as a successful but not extraordinary player in the consulting industry. He was escorted to a conference room where Ryan and 3 other senior managers waited to present their vision for the company's future under Thornfield's ownership. When Marcus entered the room, Ryan's expression shifted from professional confidence to shock, then to something approaching panic. The other managers looked confused by their colleague's sudden loss of composure. "Good morning," Marcus said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "I'm Marcus Chen, CEO of Thornfield Industries. I understand you'd like to discuss how Pinnacle Corp might fit into our organization." The presentation that followed was professionally competent but unremarkable. Ryan struggled to maintain his composure, his usual confidence undermined by the surreal experience of being evaluated by his brother. The other managers compensated admirably, demonstrating the kind of
Collaborative leadership that Marcus valued. After the formal presentation, Marcus asked to speak with each manager individually. When Ryan's turn came, the brothers found themselves alone in the conference room for the first time since their weekend in Sacramento. "I had no idea you were involved in this acquisition," Ryan said, his voice strained. "Because it's not about you," Marcus replied. "It's about whether Pinnacle Corp represents value to Thornfield Industries." "And does it?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Your team is competent, your client relationships are solid, and your operational metrics are acceptable. The question is whether that's enough to justify the investment. What can I do to improve our chances?" The question revealed how completely the dynamic between them had shifted. Ryan was no longer the successful younger brother offering career advice to his struggling sibling. He was a middle manager hoping to impress a CEO who happened to share his DNA. "You can focus on demonstrating value rather than managing relationships. If this acquisition goes through, I won't be your brother at work. I'll be your CEO. The standards will be exactly the same as they are for everyone else." Ryan nodded, seeming to understand the implications. "And if the acquisition doesn't go through? Then you'll need to build your career somewhere else, just like thousands of other capable professionals do every day." 2 weeks later, Thornfield Industries announced its acquisition of Pinnacle Corp for $250 million. The deal was structured to retain existing management while integrating Pinnacle's operations into Thornfield's broader strategic framework. Marcus received a text message from Ryan the day the acquisition was announced. "Thank you for giving us a fair evaluation." Marcus typed his response carefully. "I didn't give you anything. You earned it through the quality of your work and your team's performance. That's how it will continue to work going forward." The integration proceeded smoothly over the following months. Ryan adapted to his new role within Thornfield's hierarchy, demonstrating the kind of professional competence that Marcus had always suspected lay beneath his brother's arrogance. More importantly, he seemed to understand that his relationship with Marcus had fundamentally changed. A year after the acquisition, Marcus found himself in Phoenix for a routine review of regional operations. He met with Ryan and his team to discuss performance metrics and strategic initiatives, conducting the meeting with the same professional standards he applied throughout the organization. After the formal meeting, the brothers walked together to the parking garage, their conversation focused on business matters, until they reached Marcus's rental car. "Marcus," Ryan said, his voice carrying a weight that had nothing to do with corporate hierarchy, "I want you to know that working for you has taught me things about leadership that I never understood before." "Such as?" "That real power isn't about making people feel small. It's about making them feel capable of achieving more than they thought possible." Marcus felt a surge of pride, not just in his brother's professional development, but in the man Ryan was becoming. That's the most important lesson any leader can learn. The moment you start using your position to diminish others is the moment you stop being worthy of leadership. They shook hands in the parking garage, but this time the gesture felt different. Not ceremonial or formal, but genuine. The handshake of 2 professionals who respected each other's contributions and understood their respective roles. Driving to the airport, Marcus reflected on the complete transformation of his relationship with his family.
The parents who had once worried about his ability to hold down a steady job now called regularly to discuss his insights about business and leadership. The brother who mocked his ambitions now worked to earn his professional respect. But perhaps most importantly, Marcus learned that true success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about becoming the person he had always been capable of being, regardless of external validation or recognition. The boy who had stirred instant ramen in a cramped apartment while enduring his brother's condescension had grown into a man who controlled resources that spanned continents. But the real victory wasn't the money or the power or the recognition. It was the knowledge that he had remained true to his vision, even when everyone around him suggested he should abandon it. As his plane lifted off from Phoenix, Marcus opened his laptop and began reviewing proposals for Thornfield's next major strategic initiative. There were companies to acquire, technologies to develop, markets to enter. The work of reshaping the business world continued, driven by the same passion for innovation that had sustained him through years of failure and doubt. His phone buzzed with a message from Victoria Thornfield. "The board is impressed with the Pinnacle integration. You've proven once again that your judgment about people and opportunities is exceptional." Marcus typed his response while watching the landscape pass below. "Thank you, but we're just getting started." And as the plane carried him back toward New York, toward the challenges and opportunities that awaited him, Marcus smiled with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had transformed not just his own life, but the lives of everyone around him. The nobody his brother had mocked had become somebody worth following. And that transformation had taught them all lessons about success, leadership, and the power of refusing to accept other people's limitations. Years passed, and Marcus's leadership of Thornfield Industries became the stuff of business legend. The predictive technology he had developed evolved into something far more sophisticated, a comprehensive artificial intelligence system that could analyze market trends, consumer behavior, and economic indicators with unprecedented accuracy. Under his guidance, Thornfield not only dominated their existing markets, but expanded into entirely new sectors, from renewable energy to biotechnology. The transformation wasn't just about corporate success. Marcus had fundamentally changed how business decisions were made across multiple industries. Other companies began developing their own predictive systems, trying to replicate Thornfield's advantages, but none could match the sophistication of Marcus's original algorithms. The technology that had begun as a desperate attempt to prove himself had become the foundation of a new approach to strategic planning. During his 5th year as CEO, Marcus received an invitation that would have seemed impossible during his days of eating instant ramen in a studio apartment. Harvard Business School wanted him to deliver the keynote address at their annual leadership conference, speaking to an audience of current students, alumni, and business leaders from around the world. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Victoria Thornfield herself, who had remained as chairman of the board after her retirement as CEO. She knocked on his office door with the familiarity that spoke to their evolved relationship, now more mentor and friend than supervisor and subordinate. "Marcus, I have something I think you'll find interesting," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk with the comfortable ease of someone who had occupied that office for decades before him. "Another acquisition proposal?" Marcus asked, glancing up from the quarterly reports he'd been reviewing. "Better. Harvard wants you to give the Kohlberg Lecture next spring. It's their most prestigious speaking engagement, reserved for leaders who have fundamentally changed how business operates." Marcus set down his pen, genuinely surprised. The Kohlberg Lecture was named after Jerome Kohlberg, one of the pioneers of private equity, and previous speakers had included some of the most influential business leaders of the past century. To be invited meant recognition not just
Success, but of lasting impact on business practice. "But that's quite an honor," he said carefully. "What's the expected topic?" "The transformation of strategic decision-making in the digital age. They want you to share not just what you've accomplished, but how you've changed the way entire industries think about planning and risk assessment." Marcus walked to his window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline that had become as familiar as his childhood neighborhood. The view encompassed hundreds of other companies, many of which now used variations of the predictive modeling techniques that Thornfield had pioneered. His influence extended far beyond his own organization.
When is the lecture scheduled? April 15th. That gives you 5 months to prepare, assuming you accept. Marcus turned back to Victoria, seeing in her expression the same confidence that had led her to offer him the CEO position years earlier. She believed he belonged on that stage, addressing the next generation of business leaders, sharing insights that could shape how they approached their own careers. "I'll accept," he said, "but I want to do more than just talk about technology and algorithms. I want to share the human story behind the innovation." Victoria smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. The most powerful business lessons aren't about spreadsheets and market analysis. They're about perseverance, vision, and the courage to pursue ideas that others don't understand." The months that followed were among the most reflective of Marcus's career. Preparing the lecture required him to examine not just what he had accomplished, but how those accomplishments had shaped him as a leader and as a person. He found himself thinking frequently about the journey from that cramped studio apartment to the executive suite, about the failures that had taught him resilience and the successes that had taught him responsibility. During this period, his relationship with his family continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Ryan had thrived under Thornfield's ownership, developing into the kind of leader Marcus had always believed he could become. The arrogance that had once defined his personality had been replaced by a quiet confidence based on genuine achievement rather than superficial markers of success. Their parents had become regular visitors to New York, staying in Marcus's penthouse guest room and marveling at the life their son had built. But more importantly, they had learned to appreciate not just his success, but the person he had become. Their conversations now ranged across topics that had nothing to do with business or achievement, touching on philosophy, art, travel, and the simple pleasures of family connection. One evening in February, as Marcus worked on his Harvard lecture in his home office, Ryan called from Phoenix with news that surprised them both. "Marcus, I wanted to let you know that I've been offered a position with another company. A significant promotion, actually. Chief Operating Officer of a firm in Seattle." Marcus felt a complex mixture of emotions: pride in his brother's professional development, concern about losing a capable executive, and something deeper: the realization that Ryan no longer needed his protection or guidance. "That's excellent news, Ryan. Tell me about the opportunity." "It's a mid-sized technology consulting firm that's been growing rapidly. They need someone with experience in strategic planning and operational efficiency. Apparently, my work with Thornfield's predictive systems has given me exactly the background they're looking for." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The technology that Marcus had developed had not only transformed Thornfield Industries, but it also equipped Ryan with skills that made him valuable to other organizations. "Are you inclined to accept?" "I think I am," Ryan said. "It's time for me to test myself in a leadership role where I'm not working for my brother. I need to know if what I've learned can transfer to a different environment." Marcus understood the sentiment completely. Leadership requires
Independence, the ability to make decisions based on one's own judgment rather than external validation or support. "I think you should take it," Marcus said. "You've developed into an exceptional leader, and you deserve the opportunity to prove that to yourself and others." "Thank you. That means more to me than you might realize." After ending the call, Marcus sat in his office thinking about the circular nature of personal growth. Ryan's departure from Thornfield would mark the completion of a transformation that had begun with his cruel text messages years earlier. The brother who had once mocked Marcus's ambitions was now pursuing his own vision of leadership, equipped with skills and confidence that had been shaped by his experience working under Marcus's guidance. The Harvard lecture date approached with increasing media attention. Business publications began running preview articles about Marcus's expected remarks, speculating about what insights he might share about the future of strategic planning. Students at Harvard organized viewing parties for classmates who couldn't attend in person. The business world was genuinely curious about what lessons this young CEO might offer. Marcus spent the week before the lecture in Boston, meeting with faculty members and current students, getting a sense of their interests and concerns. What he discovered surprised him.
Despite their academic preparation and intellectual sophistication, many of these future business leaders were struggling with the same fundamental questions that had once plagued him. How do you maintain vision in the face of criticism? How do you persevere through failure without becoming bitter? How do you build something meaningful while managing the expectations of family, friends, and colleagues who may not understand your journey? These conversations influence the final shape of his lecture. Instead of focusing primarily on technological innovation or strategic methodology, Marcus decided to center his remarks on the personal transformation that made professional achievement possible. The day of the lecture dawned clear and cold, with early spring sunshine streaming through the windows of Harvard Business School's largest auditorium. Marcus arrived early, walking through the empty space where he would soon address an audience of over 800 people. The setting was intimidating, but he felt the same calm confidence that had carried him through his first meeting with Victoria Thornfield. His family had flown in for the occasion, including Ryan, who had taken time away from his new position in Seattle to attend. They sat in the front row, their expressions reflecting a mixture of pride and amazement that seemed to encompass their entire relationship with Marcus. Victoria Thornfield introduced him with remarks that traced his journey from unknown entrepreneur to transformational CEO, emphasizing not just his achievements, but his impact on business practice across multiple industries. As she spoke, Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude for the mentor who had seen his potential when few others could. When Marcus finally took the stage, he began not with corporate statistics or technological specifications, but with a story about instant ramen and text messages from a younger brother who thought he understood the world better than his elder sibling. 5 years ago, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the auditorium's acoustics, I received a message that changed my life. Not because it contained good news or valuable information, but because it crystallized everything I had been working to prove about the nature of success and the power of perseverance. He told them about the cramped apartment, the failed ventures, the family dinners where his ambitions were dismissed as unrealistic fantasies. He shared the story of developing revolutionary technology, while everyone around him assumed he was wasting his time on impossible dreams. The lesson I want to share with you today isn't about algorithms or market analysis. It's about the personal transformation that made professional achievement possible.
Relationship between external validation and internal conviction. Too many promising leaders abandon their vision the moment it becomes difficult to maintain, the moment the people around them suggest they should be more practical, more realistic, more conventional. The audience was completely silent, absorbed in a narrative that resonated with their own struggles to balance ambition with expectation, innovation with security. Success isn't about proving other people wrong, Marcus said, building toward the central theme of his lecture. It's about remaining true to your vision even when external circumstances suggest you should abandon it. The moment you allow other people's limitations to become your limitations is the moment you stop growing as a leader. He walked them through the development of his predictive technology, explaining not just the technical aspects, but the psychological challenges of pursuing innovation that few people understood. He shared the story of his meeting with Victoria Thornfield, emphasizing how preparation and persistence had created an opportunity that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Overnight success is a myth, Marcus told them. What appears to be sudden achievement is usually the result of years of invisible preparation, failures that teach essential lessons, and the kind of patience that allows you to wait for the right moment to reveal what you've been building. The lecture continued for over an hour, covering topics that range from strategic planning to family relationships, from technological innovation to personal integrity. Marcus drew connections between his individual journey and broader principles of leadership, helping his audience understand how personal transformation enables professional achievement. When he reached the conclusion of his prepared remarks, Marcus shared one final story about his brother's recent promotion and departure from Thornfield Industries.
The ultimate measure of leadership isn't the success you achieve for yourself, he said. It's the success you enable in others, including people who may have once doubted your capabilities or dismissed your vision. True leadership transforms not just organizations, but relationships, not just markets, but the people who participate in those markets. The standing ovation lasted for several minutes, but Marcus found himself looking primarily at his family, seeing in their faces a recognition that went beyond professional accomplishment. They understood now not just what he had achieved, but who he had become in the process of achieving it. During the reception that followed, Marcus was surrounded by students and faculty members asking questions about everything from career strategy to family dynamics. But the conversation that meant the most to him was a brief exchange with Ryan, who approached him as the evening was winding down. "Marcus, I wanted to thank you for including my story in your lecture. Not just the part about my new job, but the earlier part about the text messages and the family dinners." "Why, thank you for that." "Because it showed people that growth is possible, that people can change, that mistakes don't have to define us permanently. I needed to hear that as much as anyone in the audience." Marcus felt a warmth that had nothing to do with professional recognition or public acclaim. The relationship with his brother had been healed not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through patient work on both sides, through willingness to acknowledge mistakes and commit to growth. The months following the Harvard lecture brought numerous speaking invitations from other universities, business conferences, and corporate leadership programs. Marcus was selective about which opportunities he accepted, preferring events where he could engage in meaningful dialogue rather than simply deliver prepared remarks. One invitation that particularly intrigued him came from a small college in Sacramento, not far from where he had grown up. The business program was modest, serving primarily first-generation college students from working-class families. The speaking fee they offered was minimal compared to what he could command at prestigious universities, but something about their mission resonated with his own experience. Marcus accepted the invitation and flew to Sacramento on a warm day in October, driving the familiar streets of his childhood with a perspective that would have been unimaginable during his years of struggle. The college campus was small and unpretentious, but the energy was unmistakable. Students who understood that education represented opportunity, faculty members who believed in the transformational power of learning. The auditorium was packed with students, many of whom had never heard a CEO speak in person. Marcus looked out at faces that reflected the diversity of contemporary America: immigrants and native-born citizens, urban and rural backgrounds, traditional students, and working adults pursuing degrees while supporting families. For this audience, Marcus crafted a different version of his message, focusing less on corporate strategy and more on the fundamental mindset required for upward mobility. He talked about the importance of maintaining vision when external circumstances suggest that ambitious goals are unrealistic. He shared practical advice about developing skills that would be valuable regardless of economic conditions. "Your background doesn't determine your future," he told them. "Your preparation does. Your persistence does. Your willingness to pursue opportunities that others might overlook does." After the lecture, Marcus was approached by a young woman whose story reminded him powerfully of his own journey. Maria Santos was a first-generation college student studying computer science while working nights at a local restaurant to support her family. She had developed an idea for a mobile application that could help small businesses manage inventory more efficiently, but she lacked the resources to develop a prototype. "Mr. Chen," she said, her voice nervous but determined, "I know this might sound presumptuous, but I was wondering if you might have any advice about how to get started with a technology startup when you don't have any connections or financial resources." Marcus saw in her eyes the same mixture of ambition and uncertainty that he remembered from his own early ventures, the same hunger for opportunity combined with the practical constraints of limited resources. "Tell me about your idea," he said. And for the next 20 minutes, he listened as Maria outlined her vision for streamlining small business operations through intuitive mobile technology. Her concept was solid, her technical understanding was impressive, and her passion was unmistakable. But more than that, Marcus recognized in her the kind of persistence and innovative thinking that had driven his own success. Maria, I'm going to give you some advice that I wish someone had given me when I was starting out. Don't waste time trying to convince traditional investors who don't understand your vision. Build a working prototype first, even if it's rough. Prove that your concept works, then approach people who are already successful in the industry you want to enter. He pulled out his business card and wrote his personal email address on the back. Send me a working demo when you have one. I can't promise anything, but I'm always interested in innovative solutions to real business problems. 6 months later, Marcus received an email from Maria with the subject line that made him smile. Working prototype ready for review. Her application was impressive, demonstrating exactly the kind of intuitive design and practical functionality that could transform how small businesses manage their operations. Marcus forwarded the demo to Sarah Chen, his head of mergers and acquisitions, with a simple note: "This could be the foundation of our small business technology division. Let's explore a partnership." The partnership that emerged was structured as a joint venture, with Thornfield Industries providing capital and resources, while Maria retained creative control
And a significant equity stake. Within 2 years, her application had become the leading inventory management solution for small businesses across the country. During the celebration dinner for the venture's second anniversary, Marcus found himself reflecting on the circular nature of opportunity and mentorship. The success that had seemed so elusive during his own early career was now enabling him to create opportunities for others who possessed the same drive and vision he had once struggled to maintain. Maria approached him during the dinner, her expression serious despite the celebratory atmosphere. "Mr. Chen, I wanted to thank you not just for the partnership, but for believing in my idea when it was still just a concept. A lot of people told me I should be more realistic about my prospects." "What did you tell them?" "I told them that realistic people don't change the world. Visionary people do." Marcus smiled, recognizing his own words from their first conversation. "And what have you learned since then?" "That success isn't about proving other people wrong. It's about staying true to your vision long enough to prove yourself right." As Marcus listened to Maria articulate the lessons she had learned during her entrepreneurial journey, he realized that his own transformation was continuing in ways he hadn't anticipated. Leadership wasn't just about achieving personal success or building profitable companies. It was about creating conditions where others could discover and develop their own potential. The boy who had once stirred instant ramen while enduring his brother's mockery had become a man who could offer opportunity to the next generation of innovators. The journey from nobody to somebody had revealed something profound about the nature of true success. It wasn't a destination, but a platform. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not a personal achievement, but a responsibility to others who were following similar paths. Years later, when business historians wrote about the transformation of strategic decision-making in the 21st century, they would trace the revolution back to a cramped studio apartment where a failed entrepreneur refused to accept other people's definitions of his worth. They would study the algorithms and analyze the market impact, but they would miss the most important part of the story: the human transformation that made technological innovation possible. The real legacy of Marcus Chen wasn't the billions of dollars he generated for shareholders or the industry practices he revolutionized. It was the example he set for anyone who had ever been told their dreams were unrealistic, their ambitions misguided, their vision impossible to achieve. In the end, the text message that had once seemed like the ultimate insult had become the catalyst for proving that nobody's opinion about your potential matters more than your own commitment to realizing it. The brother who had called him a nobody had inadvertently inspired him to become somebody who could change not just his own life, but the lives of countless others who dared to dream beyond the limitations that others tried to impose on them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.